was my biggest takeaway last night. Was it was irritating because she did well in reading her speech that obviously had been written for her. She did well in delivering it. And she is an empty vessel. She remains an empty vessel. We don't know what we're electing. We have clues that suggest she is nothing like the moderate her speechwriter wants us to believe she is. But they're perfectly happy, they, the Democrats and the media that's covering for them, to keep it a mystery, Charles, because they understand the truth will not inure to her benefit. And their main takeaway is that Trump is just such a special evil, he must be stopped. And we don't really care what's in the bill. We'll have to pass it before we can read it.
Yeah, and it's a huge problem for them in the long run, because even if it works, people will eventually notice. I mean, Harris has not actually advanced a single argument. She's made the case that she should be president. Quite why she hasn't explained. But she hasn't made an argument for a set of policies in which she believes, or that her party is superior. And so if she does become president, I think a lot of people are going to be very quickly shocked. And the only concession to policy in which she has thus far indulged was to talk about price controls and subsidies for housing demand, which was savaged in the Washington Post, savaged at CNN, savaged by every major economist. And the best Jason Furman, who was Obama's favorite economist, could say was, well, it probably won't happen, which is not a ringing endorsement. And so she stopped that quite quickly. This is an empty campaign. She is a shell. And as I said earlier, and as you have intimated with the clips that you've played, she has largely left the details of who she is, what she stands for, and what she would represent to the press. And it reminds me of this old Ricky Gervais joke where he's talking about God creating the earth. And, he says, and he created the lands and the seas, and he creates the animals. And then he says, and it was good. And Gervais says, wasn't that great? You get to review your own work. You get to do all the work. And then you're the guy who gets to do the definitive review of your work. This is how I feel about the press. They've created this completely false person, and they've managed to promulgate this abroad the land so that everyone has this insincere conception of Kamala Harris. And then they report on that. They say, wow, look, she's doing okay in the polls, or people think that she's the future, or people think that she's full of joy. Well, yeah, because you just told them right. Assiduously who she is. You did the work, and now you're doing the review.
There's a couple of things on that. So I mentioned at the top of the show, our friends over at Commentary, Matt Continetti goes on that podcast, and he was suggesting today that if you read her speech, it matches up perfectly with everything David Axelrod has been saying for a year about how Biden needed to change his messaging, that the Save Democracy stuff wasn't working, and that what he really needed to do was change the messaging in a way that matches up perfectly with everything Kamala Harris said. So that's Axelrod. Then today, look at, there's John Favreau. He's part of Pod Save America. Kamala Harris absolutely crushed this. Presidential as any convention speech I've ever heard. Ben Rhodes, former Deputy National Security Advisor under Obama. Kamala just did some real work on foreign policy, combating autocracy, supporting allies, standing up to Putin, speaking to the suffering of Palestinians in a way that we rarely hear. This is someone ready to be president right now. My thought is that if any or all of these guys, Rich, is actually advising her on how to craft her speech, her policy, or otherwise behind the scene, then this is absolutely grossly disgusting and irresponsible. That needs to be disclosed. You can help her. Axelrod can help her. Favreau, they can all help her, not without disclosing it, and not without then going out and commenting on the very things that you may or may not, but may have been advising her on.
I believe, isn't Axelrod's former political consultancy working for her now? And certainly Axelrod...
Well, David Plouffe is.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's all the kind of former Obama brew. And Axelrod, to his credit, has been right about most things. I mean, he was early on saying this age thing is a problem for Joe Biden, early on saying we got to dump him. And he's right about the democracy message. There was some of it at the convention. We saw another video of a montage of the shocking images from January 6th. He had Jamie Raskin and others making a January 6th type case. But I don't think Barack Obama, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think he mentioned it once. And Kamala did mention it, but it wasn't the main focus. And I think they're right to make a case against Trump that's more of the kind of argument you make against a conventional Republican. He wants to cut taxes for the rich. He's out of touch. He's all about the billionaires. He wants to cut Social Security and Medicare, which he doesn't, and he wants to ban abortion. And he's very familiar and divisive, and it's time to move on. That is a much more sensible case than what they were trying to do and what the Biden campaign was trying to do.
True. I mean, and no one would dispute that that's a better message. But my only suggestion, or what I'm saying explicitly is, if Axelrod actually is advising this campaign in any way and then goes on CNN as a supposedly clear-minded, objective analyst, understanding he has Democrat, leanings and has helped Obama, that's dishonest. That is unethical. It's unethical by CNN. This is what John Meacham got in trouble for over at MSNBC, where he had written the Joe Biden speech. I can't remember which one. It might have been the State of the Union. Remember this? And then he went on MSNBC. He was like, it was soaring. It was amazing. Oh, really? You really love your own pen?
Yeah, it also could have been the Jim Crow 2.0 speech. I forget. But these all these Charlie mentioned this on the editors recorded a while ago. All these same people, these historians, John Meacham and others, Doris Kearns Goodwin, who advised Biden and tried to convince him he was the next FDR, are going to be there, right, in January if she wins, saying the same things, whispering the same things in her ear. So no matter what she's running as now, she will attempt to be a transformational left-wing president, LBJ and FDR all wrapped into one as soon as she assumes office.
Here's another one for you. Jonathan Chait, New York Magazine, best acceptance speech I've ever seen. He goes on to say, it was perfect. Absolutely perfect. Okay, that's not what I saw, but I did see somebody who was a good reader and managed not to do the weird cackle. Somebody was asking about this the other day online about, the joy. I mean, it's everywhere. It's so annoying. Matt Taibbi's been going off on this. It's really irritating him. It's obviously all a campaign to excuse away her bizarre cackle and the inopportune, inappropriate times she uses it, Charles. To me, this whole thing has been actually a very smart and effective rebranding effort. Trump's his greatest gift is marketing. And the Democrats appears to be branding, which is a slightly different but related thing. They took one of her biggest weaknesses, this weird, off-putting, strange cackle, and they rebranded it joyful. She's joyful. The Republicans are dour. That was in her speech last night, talking about how they're just so down. Their messaging so down. She's happy, you see. She's not depressing. She's a cackler. That shows how joyful she is. And we're supposed to accept this as a policy prescription for our inflationary and border problems.
It's risky, though. It is working at the moment, but it is risky. I think there is a very thin line between turning somebody's liabilities into a meme and making them cool by some strange process of alchemy, and that person becoming a joke as a result. I mean, a lot of the memes about Kamala Harris, if the circumstances change, are going to look like criticisms. The coconuts, and the rebranding of the laugh, the palm trees, and so on. Because she hasn't fundamentally changed. I mean, it's funny, you played that clip, the first one you played of the journalists being obsequious when around her, she cackled. She said 2 words and then she cackled. So she can hide it on a stage, but she can't hide it forever because that's who she is. And I do think, although I think she has a real good chance of winning in November, I do think that the time for a completely substanceless, media-driven, vacuous campaign is coming to an end. I actually don't think that the public is shallow enough to let this continue unchallenged for another 70 days. Maybe something can replace it and it will infuriate us just as much. But there's going to come a point, especially when Americans tune in, which they tend not to really until the election gets closer, when they say, okay, but what else is there? Who is this person? What has she done? What does she think? What has she said? I think they believe that they can get away with this indefinitely. I don't think that they can, because I don't think you can indefinitely make her appealing. So there's going to have to be something else as interference.
Well, you raise an interesting point, how the cackle came out after 2 seconds in that exchange. So we've now learned from the reporting that she was very brushed back on her heels after her interview with Lester Holt, where, I mean, truly one of the nicest guys in journalism. And he said to her, you haven't been to the border. And she's the border czar. And she's like, and I haven't been to Europe, right? And everyone saw what a faux pas it was and how dumb she looked. And the reports are that she was actually very rattled by her own performance and went underground for a while, like started hiding from the press and started Googling what Fox News was saying about her. It's the same person, Rich, who last night got up there and in one of the few references to her father, where's her father, by the way? Where is her father? Her father is alive, but was not there, and apparently does not have a relationship with her. We looked for any sort of public comment. It's been years since he said anything about her. I have no idea what the story is. The guy was absolutely a Marxist. He met the wife at a civil rights event. She appears to have been very Marxy too, and that's their daughter. I really don't know what happened to Donald Harris. Anyway, she said in one of the few lines about him that the mother, when they went to the playground, would say, stay close. And the father would say, run, Kamala, run. Don't be afraid. Don't let anything stop you. From my earliest years, she told us, he taught me to be fearless. But Rich, she's not. And this reminds me so much of you know how it is. When you're at a cocktail party and somebody's like, oh, well, I'm the kind of person who, and then whatever comes next is a lie about themselves. Right? It's what they wish they were, because nobody talks about themselves that way. The 7-foot center doesn't tell you how tall he is. So the fact that she's telling us, I was taught to be fearless, the same woman who had to rehearse her dinner party conversation with her staff, it's a lie, right? She is scared, and that's a danger. You put somebody like that in the position of the presidency, and you don't know who's calling the shots.
Yeah. So this is the case that Trump has to make. A lot of Republicans are saying it's all about policy. He's got to talk about policy. Yeah, he should talk about policy. But it all needs to come back to the sense that she's weak, that she's a phony, and that she's a mouthpiece for others. So therefore, she's not suitable to be president. That's what you're going. That's the clinching argument at the end of the day. She's not suitable for this job. The fact that she can't do interviews, the fact that she was too weak to stand up to the left in 2019 and told them everything that they wanted to hear, and now has totally reversed herself and is all on teleprompter. She's too weak. She can't do this job. And that's the case that Trump has to make. Now he has the media against him, of course, as all Republicans do, but the headwinds now are stronger than they've ever been. But he's got to expose her. And I think, eventually she'll do an interview. I mean, she's on the record saying she'll do one by the end of the month. The days are ticking away here. But I think it'll be, she'll sit down with Tim Walz and they'll do an interview with Rachel Maddow, nearly weeping with joy during the whole interview. And they can say they did it.
Some Americans enjoy using their credit cards because it can be a hassle-free way to pay, not to mention a secure one. But our sponsor, the American Payments Coalition, says that some DC politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. They say the bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that could jeopardize your data security and your rewards. They say corporate megastores will make more money, and guess who will wind up paying the price? You. Find out more info at guardyourcard.com and consider telling Congress to guard your card while you're there, too. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.